Trags watched a strange crimson sphere bob through the midday crowd, its erratic movements out of sync with the flow of foot traffic. His eyes, adapted for the shadowed caverns of his homeworld, struggled in the harsh brightness of this alien star's light. The market buzzed with the sounds of 100 foreign species. The air was thick with unusual scents that threatened to overwhelm his sensitive nostrils. A pungent mix of oily spices, acrid smoke, and something that smelled faintly metallic and sour. The crimson sphere bobbed closer, and Trags realized it was held aloft by a remarkably small creature stubby, 5-fingered hand. These humans, as this world's primary inhabitants were called, were a biological anomaly. They were small, soft, bipedal, lacking the protective exoskeletons or redundant organs common in more advanced species. Somehow, they'd survived and thrived enough to warrant a seat in the Galactic Concord. The small human navigated the crowd with uncanny precision, dodging and weaving around larger species while the crimson sphere bobbed safely above the crush. Drawn by curiosity, Trags stepped out of the filtered air of his species-designated stall and trailed behind the human. His long, chitinous legs carried him through the crowd with far more ease as the human and their curious cargo disappeared down a narrow side corridor. The passage opened into a vast covered building, buzzing even more intensely than the outdoor market. Humans thronged around colourful stalls bursting with goods from what Trags presumed were other human-controlled worlds. His translation implant struggled to keep up with the sheer volume of languages washing over him. The bobbing red sphere finally came to a rest as the human stopped before a massive stall. Trags, keeping a discreet distance, craned his neck to get a better look. Hundreds of the red spheres were piled in enormous, sloping mounds. Their acrid and almost overpowering scent made the hair-like sensory organs on Trags's antennae twitch in confusion. He scanned other stalls. There were piles of green stalks, bizarrely shaped yellow pods, and knobbly brown roots, all displayed with the same careful arrangement, the sheer variety baffling him. His translation implant caught a snatch of conversation nearby. "The sweetest of the season, sir. Just came in this morning." A realization shot through him. This was a food market. The humans were surrounding themselves with raw, unprocessed sustenance. His translator struggled to pass the deeper complexity of it. Humans didn't simply synthesize food packs optimized for nutritional value like most civilized races. These creatures gathered, prepared, and consumed organic matter in its most primitive form. The small human left the crimson sphere stall, clutching 3 of the spheres in its peculiar hands. It stopped before another stall overflowing with knobbly brown roots and exchanged some brightly coloured slips of material with the vendor there. Trags watched, fascinated, as this bizarre food ritual unfolded with a casualness that defied reason. Why go to such lengths, he wondered. The risks seemed astronomical. Contamination, spoilage, and even intentional poisoning were constant threats in a primitive system. Trags decided he had to get a closer look. His segmented legs could propel him with surprising speed in near silence. He skirted around the edge of the crowd and slipped behind the crimson sphere stall while the human was still distracted. He reached out a forelimb and carefully plucked a sphere from the stack. It was surprisingly light, its outer skin cool and smooth beneath his touch. He rotated it slowly, seeking any clue as to its purpose. There was a small, woody protrusion at the top. Was that how the humans intended to open it? A shout startled him, and Trags dropped the crimson sphere in surprise. A larger, older human glared at him from across the stall, its face a mask of indignant rage. Trags's compound eyes struggled to make sense of the human's expression, and his translator crackled with broken phrases. "Can't touch, germ spreading, pay for that." Mortification flooded through him. Touching raw food clearly carried some cultural significance he hadn't understood. Desperate to rectify his mistake, Trags pulled a credit chip from his pouch and held it out to the scowling human. The effect was instantaneous. The human's expression cleared. It barked a syllable thanks and handed Trags the sphere in exchange for the chip. Trags retreated, his agitation barely concealed. It would take extensive analysis and careful cultural consultation before he could understand the concept of a species that celebrated raw food with such fervor that they risked contamination and disease, just for the experience. He hurried from the market, eager to escape the overwhelming sensory assault. There was a small, secluded park nearby where he could regain his composure while studying this bewildering sphere. Trags found a shaded bench and settled his long form awkwardly onto it. He examined the sphere again, his antennae twitching curiously. Using the woody protrusion as a guide, he delicately broke the sphere open. The scent that hit him nearly knocked Trags off the bench. Sweet, sharp, with an underlying acidic tang, it was intoxicating and repulsive all at once. Inside, the crimson flesh clung stubbornly to a large, round pit. His translator helpfully identified the fleshy substance as fruit tentatively. Trags extracted a small piece and brought it towards his mouth. The explosion of flavour defied understanding. It was sweet, so intensely sweet that his gustatory senses almost overloaded. Beneath that was a sourness that prickled at his palate, all wrapped within a texture so juicy that his instinct was to retreat. Trags recoiled initially, unsure how to process this onslaught on his senses. But something compelled him to take another bite. This time the flavours didn't feel quite so overwhelming. The sweetness was still intense, but now balanced by the tartness. It was almost pleasant. With a feeling of cautious adventure, he devoured the remainder of the fruit, savouring the strange dance of sensations on his tongue. As he discarded the pit, Trags felt an odd surge of elation. He'd done something reckless, something entirely out of character for his cautious species. He'd broken cultural taboos, navigated an alien food ritual, and most surprisingly, hadn't hated the experience. Perhaps there was more to these peculiar humans than he first realized.